1432. Can you please move your car? CAA. 1432. Your vehicle is blocking somebody else's car. Um, please move it. Okay, welcome back. We are now on to the final session. And this session, we have three speeches. Uh, we have Ravi. Ravi Vikramanayaka is CEO of Kelly Felder. Okay, now he has a very interesting story to share with us how to build a brick and mortar business on digital space. It's a wonderful story, and this man has great ambitions for his brand. So we'll listen from him. We have Sneh Sharma. Sneh Sharma is leading an agency which she claims is the only all-female digital agency in the world. I'm sure there are many only men agencies, but she is her agency is very unique. She's based in Bangalore. She has super solid credentials in social media. So there are a lot of discussions, this morning, whether we should collect likes or whether we should collect dislikes or what we will do to the likes, and now we're going to bank the likes and whatever the likes. So she's going to talk about what the hell are we going to do with likes, or life beyond likes, okay, or life before likes. Okay, we know that life before likes was fun. We have Navanil Chatterjee from Jewelter Thompson, JWT India. So he's going to talk us again, creating engaging communication in digital age. Who's joining us today? Very extremely young, very senior, young but yet very senior, marketing professionals. So we have Roshanti Silla, Marketing Director Fontera, and Prashant Subramaniam, Joint Managing Director of Media Factory Group, and Taranga, Head of Marketing, HSBC, and we have Himanshu, President JWT Colombo, to chair the sessions. And I now hand over forum to Himanshu. Please welcome our speakers.
Good evening, everybody. As this enviable job of managing this gang of some crazy people next to me, I'm going to just try and sort of rein in. And my brief to them was, don't expect me to be on your side. I'll be with the audience. So let's have some fun with these guys. Just to set up the context of this chat today, I just thought I would share my view, or rather skew theirs, and sort of take it up from there. I think, and last year, I think, Lakshman would agree with me, we had debated something closer to what we're talking today, but the focus was more to talk about how is digital relevant in today's times. That was the larger theme of that conversation. I think there has been a realization amongst all of us that agreeing with the fact that this is surely a force to reckon with is there. What we need to know now is what specifically is it changing, and how do we leverage this specific exciting medium. So, if you really consider what could be, and this is my view, open for debate, the transformation which this particular medium is being bringing in, I see them in 6, 7, 8 different ways. And I'll start with the most fundamental one. I think between yesterday and today or our future, one key change is that as marketers, we've by and large been obsessed with this word called customers, current, potential, whichever way. I think that definition is specifically being challenged by this medium, where we need to start seeing them as people. It's oversimplified, I know, but I think when you see them as people and not customers, you start seeing them in a slightly better light and a much more holistic way. The second movement I see is brands have been, and I strongly believe they will continue to be, emotional hooks through which you engage with consumers, make them sort of buy your products. But I think there is a significant addition to that which is happening, which is the brands becoming a very sort of integrated sort of element into the social and cultural fabric of our lives. They're much beyond just a product with certain functionalities and certain gratification. The third area, again, I re-emphasize the point. I think the nomenclatures of above the line communication, below the line communication, I think is significantly irrelevant in today's times. It's more becoming driven by customer touch points. Now, some of these are very sort of general knowledge kind of things, but I think if you reflect back on our everyday meeting conversations, when you meet agencies or internally when you discuss things, we tend to sort of not argue our strategies through these frames, and therefore it's just a reminder to those things. A 360-degree approach, which funnily I'd been privy to one slide from a Japanese agency many years ago, I won't name it, actually had a slide which had a pie which was sliced into 360 pieces. I thought that was quite insane, even 8, 7 years ago. You know, just because you want a surround communication, you start mathematically slicing things and start diagonally adapting things just to meet that number. It's quite silly. And therefore, this medium, more than anything else, allows nano targeting, allows very specific targets by either based on geographies or any of the customer profiles. And that's how you must choose the communication formats. A slightly nuanced point here. I think we are usually very, very obsessed with the messaging. What's the element, what's the ingredient of our messaging? But I think there's one fundamental thing which shifts here, at least at this stage of digital evolution, which is the medium becomes a message by itself. It changes the way you react, consume, or sort of behave subsequently when you see something on a message, a medium versus B. And I think that's one significant shift which must come to a realization, and some of our speakers will elaborate on this a bit more. Another interesting point for some of our media friends, and it's great news as well as a big challenge, media was like any other formal structured industry. But now you see that media is becoming a society, because the conventional formats of media, whether it's print, TV, radio, and so on and so forth, were largely sort of corporate structures which were running. But now every single individual, because of them being a platform by themselves, have become a media by themselves. Look at the people, how they blog, look at the people, the way people sort of have following on their Facebook pages or various other sort of platforms. They have become a media by itself. And I think that's a fundamental shift which we must recognize in this space. From a time where we looked at and sort of defined things in the name of consistency as consistent visual, tonality, and so on and so forth, and messaging as well, being consistent and same across various mediums, today it is becoming much more important to see whether they're unique enough. Are we making unique enough a point on specific mediums? It's not no longer the recipe for success or brand building to say, I had the same message blasted across every single point and that helped it. It doesn't help it increasingly. This is a very interesting point, a very, very classical theory, rarely practiced. In our conventional wisdom, we've always followed consistency of execution, which is the point I made a little earlier as well. But now, more than ever, with proliferation of media and digital particularly, there was no better time than this to really celebrate the consistency of idea rather than the execution. Because again, to the point I made earlier, you can have the same execution traveling across. On some of these mediums, it's not going to work, neither in terms of its content nor in terms of its imagery. It has to fundamentally shift, but the idea has to be consistent. And the last point, which is very fundamental to digital, specifically in the space of interactive technologies and social media, that from being a broadcaster sort of sense of messaging, it is now becoming real time. It has become a dialogue between us and the other stakeholders. So these are the fundamental shifts as I would set up for this conversation. And I just want to take you through three quick examples, just to sort of make a certain point. In the context of digital, I think one fundamental reality is that in this age, digital is not one thing, but it's many. Obviously, social media being accessed through our mobile phones and so on and so forth has found wider acceptance and so on and so forth. But I think we must realize and have a clear understanding of the difference between the social media as the medium versus the enabling technologies around it. That as a whole is digital. Social media is one component of it, and we tend to get very skewed in our thinking when we think so-called digital by only thinking social media. I'll give you some example. Now this picture is very visible to us and known to us. We understand all of these social media platforms. But look at how the world is changing, including in some cases even for us, right from smartphone technologies to interactive shop windows to smart durables, fridges, microwave ovens, Google glasses, your Gear watch, so to speak, which Samsung and a few other players have introduced, are smart TVs. I mean, to start with, in the other gadgets, if you look at the simple digital cameras, which now are coming Wi-Fi enabled and so on and so forth. If you look at smart TVs, which are finding huge acceptance even in Sri Lanka, are we thinking about that actively? And they are very critical components to our digital thinking, and we must not miss that. So I take you through not specific to social media sort of examples, but three quick examples of where social media played a supportive role in amplifying that. But the core digital idea was based on a lot of other things I spoke about. Here's the first example. Sorry.
Volkswagen's Fun Theory Award. My idea was the speed camera lottery. Could we get people to pay the speed limit for fun? I really believe that fun can change human behavior for the better, and I was really thrilled to see that my idea, which started as a scribble submitted into this competition, might even become reality. The speed camera lottery would do two things. One, it would photograph
Jag kör alltid lagligt, men tveksamt om jag vinner.
So brand which believes in promoting responsible driving finds an interesting way of engaging, and in the process benefits the lottery brand, I guess, as well. But it's such a unique way of engaging. There's no social media here. Of course, it get talked about there, but that's not the primary vehicle. It's a simple motion sensor camera put at a traffic light. Here's another brilliant example of how something which is not really a
During the 2010 Central American and Caribbean Games, Gatorade took the country on a beloved athlete, Jose Juan Barea, NBA player and delegate chosen to carry the national flag, and Puerto Rico's biggest hope to lead the national basketball team to win the gold medal. We placed a strap on Barea's chest that measures his heartbeat, respiration, temperature, and activity. While he carried his national flag in the opening ceremony, and when he carried the national team to victory and received his gold medal. Over 300,000 households got to see his emotions. Over 60,000 people visited the web and mobile site. Without being a sponsor, Gatorade achieved more buzz than any other brand during the games, and even created a name for Barea, the heart of Puerto Rico.
And here's the last one for some of our retail friends in the room.
From Tesco to Home Plus. And at last, it grew to rank number 2 in Korea. But Tesco had to overcome one obstacle, a fewer number of stores compared to the number 1 company, Emart. Mission: could we become number 1 without increasing the number of stores? We made an in-depth study into Koreans once more. Koreans are the second most hardworking people in the world. For them, grocery shopping once a week is a dreaded task. So we decided to approach these busy and tired people. Idea: let the store come to the people. We created virtual stores, hoping to blend into people's everyday lives. Our first try was subway stations. Although virtual, the displays were exactly the same as actual stores, from the display to the merchandise. Only one thing was different. When the online purchase is done, it will be delivered to your door right after you get home. People can relax more after work and on weekends.
실제로 보면서 사니까 진짜 되게 좋은 것 같아요. 편할 때가.
Result: people can shop at Tesco Home Plus wherever they go, with %, and online sales increased 130%. Currently, Home Plus has become number 1 in the online market and is a very close second offline.
So as you see, there are some very fundamental human truths, observations, before you get complicated with technology and social media and all the currencies involved. If you get cracking on that, everything gets solved. And just to the last slide which I want to share, because this development has obviously led to a significant shift in our engagement strategies. But the fundamentals of having a solid brand idea, having a very, very robust consumer insight or understanding, that's irreplaceable. By no means I suggest this is the best way, this is one of the good ways, is to look at something which, for example, in my organization we practice, this is something called the Circle of Things. Now, Circle of Things is very simply a tool which looks at the world in two sort of axes, real world and the virtual world, the brand's sort of inputs and the participants' input. And it cuts down a central campaign idea, right, across various areas, whether it's interaction, whether it is transmission, whether it's a product idea or it's an activation idea, or something which induces action, or something which generates word of mouth, which is where a lot of social media can come into play, or something which merely creates an engagement. Digital gets treated in this thinking of engagement as one more important element or media. That's not the starting point. The starting point is to understand the idea of the campaign, the brand, and then see that from the framework of the consumer and the resources around it. This is just a thought I want to place on the table before we start. And now I'm happy to invite our first keynote speaker. That's Ravi from Kelly & Felder. He's the CEO of Kelly & Felder, to share his personal experiences on having built a very successful digital brand in fashion retail space. Ravi.
Thank you, Mansu. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are not feeling too sleepy after a heavy lunch. It's a great honor to be here today, talking to the great audience at the LBO Brand Summit, with many intellects, especially from marketing, advertising, and branding arena. So, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, before I take you through how we use the digital media to have an engaging communication Felder, since looking at the audience, the majority is a male-dominant audience. So the benefit of them, so let me give a brief introduction. So Kelly Felder is an exclusive ladies wear brand catering to young, fairly high-end, niche customer segment. Our products may be priced little upscale, but we are yet affordable. I hope ladies here would agree with me. So, we opened our first store in December 2010 in the heart of Colombo. And then we opened our second store in Kandy, the second capital of the country, in 2011. Then we launched our online store in 2012 to cater our customers who live in overseas as well as other part of the country. Our mission is to develop the brand as an interest. We are in the process of registering the brand in US and position as a US-based Sri Lankan brand. The simple reason being, Sri Lanka is not being pursued as a fashion destination on the international context. So let me take you through how we use the digital media to create that engaging communication in 5 different areas. So number one, to understand the customer. Most of our millennials to late millennials, they were grown with satellite TVs and other digital media and devices. So they are totally and truly a digital generation. You can call them even selfie generation, as they are a generation who takes most number of selfies and publish on the social media. I hope you would agree with me. So interestingly, the selfie was the word of the year in Oxford Dictionary in year 2013. So you can understand. So when you are marketing to them, to the selfie generation, or rather digital generation, the digital media is mandatory to use with. The young generation is more brand conscious than their previous generations. So that was the opportunity we found here. So it was our challenge how we understand the emotional and rational decision making of the young customers and select our communication strategies which would get them engaged with the brand and create value. So it was about understanding the evolving youth culture and how it would influence the choice and how well we can fit into the youth ecosystem. The choice of the medium. When you're selecting a medium, first what you will look at is the return on investment. At the same time, you should be able to measure the effectiveness. In today's hyper-competitive marketplace, you can't wait months and years to see the effectiveness of your campaigns. Especially for a startup with minimum resources, we should be able to measure the effectiveness in real time. So obvious choice was to use to social media. We had to know why we use social media and expected results. It was about creating the awareness and communicating your message to the target audience. So by using the digital media, we were able to get the feedback real time and change our strategies in terms of marketing, designing, supply chain management, and customer service strategies. On the audience growth, and ladies, don't get offended if your face is not here. This was selected randomly by one of our social media person. So on the audience growth, so we had to be real and we had to be authentic. We were not copying somebody else's strategy to build the audience. So we had to be extremely innovative to build the audience. We developed appealing content, which was the pages considering different demographics. For example, for Sri Lanka, we have one page. And for the online store, we have one page. Eventually, with the growth, we will have different pages like Caliphate USA, Caliphate Australia. We have that focused engagement with our target audience. So our campaigns went viral. We had to learn the algorithms to make sure we have the maximum reach with the minimum investments. So as of today, we have grown to 160,000 fan base with 10,000 weekly engagement and up to about 600,000 weekly reach. The engagement, this is the key area. You would agree with me, a great brand is a story that's never completely told. You have to be a digital storyteller who constantly engage with the audience. It should be like once upon a time, and then the audience should be waiting eagerly what is next. So we have not harnessed the full potential of the social media has made it ever easy. You would agree, within a shorter period, you can, if you if you want to get some feedback, you can do it through social media. So we were able to get the customer feedbacks in real time and respond to them in real time and engage with them. So we our supply chain strategy on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. The advantage was we were able to measure the customer engagement immediately. So we do our campaigns today and we can see the impact on our sales by tomorrow. This is the beauty of social media. I'm sure some of our friends would not totally agree with me, but let me take it up. We further do the bus monitoring to evaluate the customer engagement. There are many tools available there to measure the customer engagement on the digital space. So let me share this video from netreporter.com. How they use the augmented reality in window shopping to have a greater customer engagement. Right, okay, thanks. So we're actually working on getting this kind of experience to our fans in the future. So just have a look how they use it effectively. So it's a window shop. You can see how the customers are engaged there. The augmented reality, where you just scan it, and then you see how the products are moving out. Okay, then let me take you through how the advocacy and influence was. Here we get our satisfied customers to recommend the brand to others. We get our customers proudly telling their wardrobes are full with Kelly Felder clothes. This will lead to brand loyalty. But here we have to be very innovative enough in terms of our designing, in terms of our communication, in terms of our engagement, to keep them glued to the brand. Facebook is a conversation, not a monologue. So you have to keep on interacting with them. Digital media has influenced the customer choice, as they will be given so many options to choose from. We have used social media, insights, and feedbacks to change how we interact with the audience and to change our designing strategies and supply chain management strategies. It is an ever-evolving strategy, how we use the digital media. You cannot have one concrete plan how you are going to do it. It's changing every day. The future. Use digital and social media as the main platform to penetrate into new international markets. We'll be a digital storyteller more aggressively. There will be challenges from competition, changing consumer demographics, evolving technology, and other macro environment factors. But we'll be there to innovate and engage with customer every day. Our audience is young, vibrant, tech-savvy, ambitious, unique, confident, and ever-growing. We are yet to utilize all the resources in digital media to engage with them. Youngsters are embracing the technology, and social media is becoming more valid as smartphones, wearables, and connected devices are on the rise. Social media is not a fad, but here to stay. Whether to embrace is not a choice, but mandatory. Customer engagement would be the key to success of the brand. We just need to know how and when to engage. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi. I think that's a very inspiring story for a homegrown brand from Sri Lanka, which I think must silence a lot of cynics and naysayers. If 1432, please do the needful. Okay, I'm happy to invite the next speaker now. That's Navanil Chatterjee. He's the Executive Planning Director from JWT. So give him a warm round of applause and welcome him, please. Thanks.
Hi. We want to start with a little bit of a word association, just let's see the first thing. Do you think of the red box anymore when you hear the word post? Chances are you'll be thinking of posting something else. Not a letter, not a mail, not that red box which we are talking about. Sorry, what am I doing? Yeah. If you actually, this is very unnerving, because you're always used to looking here and you suddenly realize, that's also technology. Okay. What is the first suffix which comes to your mind when you hear the word status? Anybody would want to guess? Suffix, I said. What word usually came after status? Anybody wants to hazard? No? I mean, usually it's a symbol, no? But that used to be in some earlier days. But nowadays, nobody thinks of a status symbol anymore because you're thinking of your status update probably. Probably that's the suffix which you're talking about. And when you hear the word tweet, probably birds are the last things in your mind nowadays, you know. You're probably thinking of something else. Now, that's what we are talking about. And who knows, the future can even be when kids will say, A is actually not for Apple, but A is actually for apps, you know. So that's the world which we are living in. You know, in the past too, there have been occasions when mankind's fundamental assumptions about itself have been felt challenged, you know, and there have been occasions, and there are people and there are visionaries and whoever you call who have brought about world around us, and then suddenly you realize that no, man, I mean, we are not the center of the earth, the center of the micro mini thing which is revolving around it. So that changed our opinion about us. It actually progressively got worse when Darwin told that, boss, you're not again those elevated species, those the king of the universe in that sense. You're not, you know. You actually have a pretty miserable past shareage of lineage in that sense, you know. So that was the second. And then, of course, Freud came and said, you're perfectly capable of fooling ourselves too. So these were existentialist shocks. These changed the way we behaved, we thought, you know. And today what we have before us is probably the digital revolution, the e-revolution, whatever you call it, the bits and bytes. It really is probably that fourth revolution. And it's actually fundamentally changing the way we think, feel, and act. You know, actually Google founders have a dream. And this image is pretty close to the dream. That search will probably go to a level where you will be thinking of it and it will be on your Google, you know, iPad or on your device, you know. So that's the future probably, you know. You don't even have to type in and search this out and you'll be thinking and somebody will be answering that. It's a revolution which has far-reaching consequences for everybody, but it has far-reaching consequences for us as an industry, as a marketing industry, as a communications industry, you know. Now every revolution has its revolutionaries. Usually the younger ones, you know, they pose a lot of challenges, they pose a lot of threats. Let's meet a few of the revolutionaries. I'm going to play a video. It could be pretty alarming and threatening to a lot of us.
If you work in marketing, you better start upping your game.
Because you haven't seen anything like us yet.
In just 10 years from now, we'll be buying and influencing buying
in ways that will confound you.
We won't just watch your ads, we'll explore
tailored for me.
Me.
And me. We want to interact with it as we watch it, not just with touch, but with voice, with gesture,
with intent. You better embed everything that is featured with additional information, social APIs, and e-commerce functionality. And we mean everything.
Everything.
Everything. The car,
the skirt,
the hotel,
the app.
Because we expect to double tap on anything to get more information. Don't worry. You'll offset the cost by on-selling any leads to those data aggregator type companies. We'll spread it through our networks
and co-create with you.
And when we do buy, there are normally more of us than there are of you.
We can change your business in one trade,
as long as the deal is on.
Augmented reality
will be the new reality.
AR apps almost function like special skills to help us navigate reality more effectively.
You wait and see what the iPhone of 2021 looks like. The clue is in the name.
And you better get used to paying us.
Our browsing, influencing, and purchasing data
will make some of us pretty rich.
But don't overstep the mark, otherwise we'll block you.
Mass blocks kill brands overnight and keep you up all night. So if you work in marketing,
you better start upping your game. Because you haven't seen anything like us yet.
Yeah, I mean, pretty alarming, you know. I mean, mass blocking brands. They're talking about those kind of things. They're talking about iPhone, the clue is in the eye. Probably the iPhone will get so extremely personalized. It's a Himanshu phone, a nominal phone, a Sneha phone. Probably will get to that level, you know. But the thing which we need to know is, are we ready to cater to these new age revolutionaries? You know, that's the critical question. The other question which we have to keep in mind, that what this has resulted into, this information overload, you know, because you can check out everything. What is the basic premise of advertising? We have been trained and taught for all this while, and now for all these years, that advertising is about hyperbole, it's about metaphor, and therefore you exaggerate. And the moment you do that, now somebody finds out, online the truth about the brands and say, man, these guys are fibbing. I mean, that's not on. This is the age of brand skepticism. In fact, the comedian Russell Brand said, if a product has a commercial, you don't need it. And that's going to be the prevailing sentiment going forward more and more. You know, if you look at the old communication construct, it was about the sausage and the sizzle. But you can make out very clearly that the sausage was almost an incidental part of the entire thing. The sizzle was what was more important, you know. So let me elaborate on this. The sizzle was obviously the rational product offering, the tangible thing on the table, the product and all it was all about. And then there was the sizzle, the rest of it, which is all about the intangible emotional values, those layers which we as advertisers love to belong, that we actually own that, we know how to do that, and we added that, you know. And we obviously elaborated and focused only about the sizzle and forgot the sausage for a long time. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but it's almost to say, put a cowboy next to some cigarettes for long enough, and of course you'll make a cult brand. In India, for those who know, put a little sweet dog, which is called the pug, next to a little sweet boy, and that's Vodafone and Hutch for you, and it will work wonders for you guys. And it has worked, no doubt about it. But probably going forward it may not, you know, because it's back to sausage time right now, you know. The democracy of information has actually allowed you to check things, to know what is real and what is not, what is exaggeration. There is social commentary, there is ratings, you know. And if your brand may be emotionally very rich, but it can get a 1-star product rating, chances are you'll find few takers for it in the marketplace, you know. So those are things which you have to keep in mind, the imperatives. You know, if you look at the therefore, what I'm trying to say is that the entire construct of brand building and advertising maybe is going to change. And this is controversial and it will provoke reaction, but I want to provoke and I want to create that controversy here, you know, because while brand building has always been about value, adding value, you know, earlier we used to get away by adding the emotional part of it. And remember that famous quote about advertising? I know 50% of my advertising budget works. I don't just know which 50%. No getting away with all those things anymore, you know. So you cannot get away with that. You have to add actually tangible value, you know, to something which is existing, you know. So instead of adding emotion to function, which you are great at, we probably need to add more function to function. And these are again strong words, provocative words, and I know the questions will come, but we'll deal with them later, you know. And the last thing to remember also, because brands will be seen more valuable, not just because they feel better, but because they work better, serve you better, and therefore make you feel better. And that's the way the construct is going to be. So the future of advertising, the future of communication will actually move from the power of associations to the power of reality. Yeah. So the one thing which I want to clear is, this is not a denial of the emotional component of brands. It's just a way and a different way of generating it. You know, emotions are not better left in an advertising and communication piece. Happiness, show happiness and you'll be happy. You do things which make the consumers happy. That's the way of generating emotions. And that's the way it's going to be even in the future. Don't talk emotions, show emotions. Evoke those emotions in people through your products, through your services, you know. So going forward, you know, a lot of people say engagement, and engagement is everything. Actually, I would like to differ. Engagement is nothing, actually. Engagement is far easier to accept if you're intelligent enough. The future is really about brand building. It's not engagement. It's far more engagement plus, you know, and 3 layers to it. Product augmentation at the center, a service orientation, and then first brand building. I'm going to quickly talk about each of these. Product augmentation is basically how do you make the product or the service better? As simple as that, you know, and you can already see a clear stream of added value functionality and user experiences being built into products. Clever design and ergonomics, beautiful interfaces, heightened sensual appeal, simpler functionality. Many, many examples. If you look at the role of sensory marketing, taste, sound, touch, feel, all of this is becoming important. There is a sound engineer who's called an oral engineer, known as M.R. Vik. He must be being paid a lot of money to specifically create the sound of a BMW door closing. That's how important it's going to be. You know, Singapore Airlines, when you walk into it, you get a particular scent, a particular aroma. There are tins of Illy coffee which have a hit of espresso aroma the moment you open the lid or the lid is pulled. That's going to be the future. It's also going to be about increased functionality. So there are hotel booking sites which you can, you know, one-click booking is possible from your search page. And you know, in China, the founder of a mobile phone brand, he said that I want products that make people scream. We really need to make products which make people scream going forward. The second thing is adding service to it, you know, more services added to an existing, you know, and those services could be related to buying the product, and sometimes related to using it, and sometimes even both. So Benadryl, remember the hay fever medicine, you know what it did? It created a pollen count. So if you're suffering and you know that this particular area has a higher pollen count, it'll give you a warning that, boss, please don't go there. Now that's where even a medicine over-the-counter product is actually going into. You know, there are light bulbs which can control with your smartphone. You know, there are forks which will take you, okay, enough carbs for the day. You know, back off proteins, you know, forks, which is called happy fork. Probably there are pens that record and upload your handwriting. For all you know, they'll tell your personality also. Maybe they'll say, you're now being a little prudish, or you're now being a little whatever, you know. So that's what it's going to be. That's what we mean by a service orientation. And the third is called a brand budding. Budding is a process in which each multiply into 1 into 2. So what we are saying is, till now, all brand conversations have been, you know, from the voice and point of view of the brand owner and the brand custodian, you know. It's always between the brand and the owner itself. But going forward, you know, you'll need to connect with even other brands, you know, and technology will help you connect with other brands through products and services. And that's what brand budding is all about, you know. Imagine Nike, great brand, Apple, great brand. They come together to create Nike Plus, which is probably even a greater story. And that's what brand budding is all about. Brands coming together and creating ecosystems and the mutual benefits of that. So this is how the future will pan out. It's a new cycle. So brands which will adopt all these 3 product, service, and brand budding will create ecosystems of connected products and connected services. You know, and that will help giving consumers the opportunity to become more involved with a brand because they're interacting with it. Because it's not just the interaction is, I have fever and therefore I have Benadryl. It goes beyond that also. It could actually potentially. And then with that involvement will come the flow of personal and usage data, which is back to the brand owner, which is to be used widely. That's the whole sphere of big data. Would you ever imagine that people who have more Thai food may actually travel abroad? Now these kind of, this is just an example, there could be incorrigible correlations which are possible and which are happening, and that's what big data allows you to do. And the more you do that, you actually take the brand to a next level and start the game all over again. Now, that's how it's going to operate in the future. It's really, really, the future is about the big O, you know, and I mean it in a provocative way. So we are less in a digital age and more in an opt-in or an opt-out age. What we mean by that is not just permissive marketing. You know, that's not all. You know, there will be certain brands which you would like to opt in. You would want to welcome them into your lives. Maybe 10, 15, 20. The challenge will be for the rest to figure out how they get into your list, his list, her list over there. I mean, that's going to be the challenge. You know, not in the CRM sense of permission, but in the emotional sense that I want this brand in my life because it's adding value by brand budding, by creating augmented products and services. You know, so one great example of how this has changed. Can you ever believe that anybody will opt in for pain? Would anybody in their right minds opt in for pain? Okay, I'm exaggerating, but you'll understand what I'm talking about through this video.
Put 2 Band-Aids on it because I think that will help. And my mom was like, put 2 Band-Aids on it because I think that will help. And I was like, 2 Band-Aids, awesome. When I have a tummy ache, I put a Band-Aid on my belly button. Can I have another one? Because it's magical. First, put on your Band-Aid brand adhesive bandage featuring a Muppets. Then scan it with your iPhone or iPad. Miss Piggy wants you to take a picture.
No, I'm not feeling well. Well, I'll take care of that. It's time to take a picture of me.
Gonzo does a wacky stunt.
I, Gonzo the Great, have developed a stunt especially designed to make you feel better.
He got stuck on the glass from shaking Gonzo. You can even swing Kermit. Do we get done? Me. My turn.
Now, if you look at this, actually it's a proof that technology is shifting basic consumer behavior and completely its entirety. When do you think a Band-Aid would be brought? Where's the consumer trigger? Where's in the cycle, consumer cycle we talk about, probably you buy it when it's either somebody has injured himself or when you run out of stock. Here, the entire conversation has changed. People will just buy it off the shelf because they want to have fun with it. Nothing to do with running out of stock, nothing to do with injury. That's how fundamental this revolution is. That's how it has changed all these old models of IDA and all of that. Awareness, desire, interest, action, or even its elongated version. So what we now have, and I'm going to really rush through this section, is the new pathway. There is awareness, there is involvement, there is active consideration, there is purchase, consumption, there is relationship building, and then finally leading to advocacy. So I guess you guys are more or less familiar. I'm going to skip some of the basic ones. We all know what awareness is, involvement is, we all know. Active consideration, obviously shifting up the order of consideration by facilitating favorable purchase, we know, intent into action, improving the user experience, which is all about the consumption, making customer feel special, and then of course the last part of advocacy, which is increased recommendations. Now the thing about advertising, and in the contrast to digital, is that digital allows you to measure the conversion at every stage, so you know what's going on, how many people have moved from which end to at every step of this journey, and that's what is critical. The other critical thing is, we all knew that in the past, 95% of our advertising budget and marketing budget was, okay, you make the brand awareness, salience is king, you make it salient and that's what it is, and you spend all your money there. But going forward, what is being predicted, the 100% of the budget will be spread across the pathway. Obviously, it will depend on evolution of countries, cultures, and digital ecosystems, but that's what it's going to be. Now, while it's a linear model, the best part about it is that it works non-linear in most cases. So it could be advocacy, which is related, going back into either involvement or active consideration. So here's one example I'll give where, you will see how, again, the model gets completely disrupted and shifted.
Most people still think mayonnaise is only good for sandwiches. And even though Hellmann's has been successfully teaching new users to consumers, one challenge still remained: the point of sale. We needed to take advantage of the moment when customers have all the right ingredients at hand. Hellmann's recipe receipt. If there's Hellmann's in your shopping cart, there's a recipe on your receipt. The software was installed in around 100 cash registers at a major supermarket chain. The consumers do their groceries as usual. At the cash register, the software recognizes the Hellmann's bag, quickly combines Hellmann's with other purchased products, and generates a custom recipe instantly printed on the receipt. Beef, onions, tomatoes, Hellmann's. Fill it with onion sauce. Chicken, parsley, curry, Hellmann's. Chicken fingers with curry. Manioc, sausage, egg, Hellmann's, Yucca.
Não, eu paguei, estava recebendo uma nota fiscal e quando eu olhei já tinha uma receita da Hellmann's. Filé de peixe com molho especial. 500 gramas de alcatra cortada em bifes, uma colher de chá de sal, meia xícara de maionese Hellmann's. Tem alface, é exatamente o que eu estou levando. É muito engraçado. Pronto, meu jantar está resolvido.
The software was installed in all cashiers for over 3 months. In the first month alone, the sales increased 44%.
I'm going to skip this, but the point here is, all fundamental advertising, says, why buy me? Here, the product has been bought, the bill has been generated. If there is a Hellmann in the list of your grocery items, they will tell you for all the things which you have bought, cabbage, carrot, whatever, and what Hellmann, together what you can prepare with it. Now, where does it start? It starts actually at advocacy, at the very beginning. You may have just bought Hellmann by whatever, and there's no why buy me there. Here's creating brand preference actually post-purchase, because this is the way you'll buy in the future, because you'll like it, you'll talk about it, you'll actually actively consider it in the future and help others consider it in the future. That's the way this entire cycle is being busted and changed. The next example, no video here, but the airlines industry. Now, one thing which we know about airlines is you can choose your airlines, you can choose the time of date, you can choose your destination, but for God's sake, the one thing which you wanted to choose all the time, never said it, never admitted it, but could not. But was who would be your fellow passenger, who would be sitting in your next seat. We always had, men at least, always the notion that some gorgeous woman will come. Never happens like that, you know. So there is this whole element of forced proximity which travel has, which air travel has. But you know, KLM so did something that, you know, it had profile of all the people. So your Facebook profile, your Instagram profile, so you could actually sit next to that hot girl if you chose. And if she also, I mean, she did, and if luckily she did not know about it, you know, in that sense, because she could also choose to have the person, you know. So that's how, you know, consumer behaviors and systems and all of this thing is getting changed. The power of technology to augment the product and service and actually take it to a different level and do things which has never been done before. You know, it's actually pull back. What the digital revolution has enriched us to do is enlarge the scope of the agency, the communication, much beyond communication actually. We advertising agency people always obsessed about this one thing, you know. All we did was, you know, just communicate. Here's the big brand idea, endless love, let's say for De Beers. Now let's create a Diamonds Are Forever communication, the print ad, the TVC and all of that. But now, you can actually go beyond communication and actually provide services, give experiences, even do good. You know, you actually fill these up, whether it's, you know, give experiences related to content, whether it's games, whether it's events, whether it's co-creation, do good, celebrate, you know, be a partner for a charity, create a movement, you know, drive consumer behavior, collaborate with a company, all kinds of things are possible. We provide even services, which is information, education, all kinds of things. Actually, our scope of work has improved beyond everything. And at JWT, we use this great to call it the brand behavior tool, because we urge people to think not just communication. What else can we do? What else? In fact, we have a thing called things to make. Can we actually create physical, tangible things from advertising itself, you know, from an advertising idea itself, you know? So this tool helps you and urges you to go beyond communication to do this. One example, you know, Corona did something, again, relevant for Sri Lanka. Maybe some brand can do it here. The cleaning up of beaches is very important. Beaches are the most littered thing. So they actually created a hotel out of that garbage. You know, out of the entire garbage which was wasted and which was kept at beaches, they created a... So what were they doing? Of course, they communicated it. They also gave an experience of living in that garbage hotel, however weird it may sound, you know, and actually did social good. Now that's extended scope of work. That's nice. And while you go about doing this, and this is really the last section of my presentation, you know, the 4 things which you need to clearly watch out for while devising a digital campaign. The first one, and I'm sure Sneha will talk a lot more about that, remember digital is all about measurability. No longer getting away with which 50% works. Yeah? So therefore, we need to identify clear objectives. And in the next slide, what I'm trying to give you is, usually, these are the 6 key, you know, objectives which any digital campaign can have. So, just going through one of 6 of them, either this is the one which is devised to be the most likely to be talk of town, most likely to get people engaged, most likely to build credibility for the brand, most likely to sell. And who says advertising sells? I mean, a lot of people have got away with, but yes, advertising can sell also, you know. Most likely to increase the fan base, most likely to make the consumer feel like a king. These are some key objectives to be kept in mind, and you need to be very focused about that. One example which I'm going to play, where we show, you know, before I play that example, one question. All of you read newspapers. So which is the ad which has come out in today's newspaper? Anybody? Come on. Any ad which you remember which came up in today's newspaper? Chances are mostly you'll draw a blank, because the worldwide recognition and recall of ads, which are print ads, that tells you about the medium is coming down to 2, 3, 4%, something like that, you know. And here's an ad, here's an idea, I would say, which kind of enhances the print and plays the role of the print in a different way.
Biggest coffee chains. We created an ad based on a simple insight. People love to read their newspaper while drinking good coffee. But how do we ensure that they drink our coffee? Meet the world's first location-based print ad. When readers encountered the ad, they could scan the embedded QR code and receive the address to the nearest Café Joe branch. They also received a Google map that presented the fastest route between their current location and our coffee shop. To encourage people to actually pay us a visit, we added a coupon for free coffee. Now readers could use it and drink coffee thanks to the newspaper ad. This way, we also made sure that next time, they'll know the way to us all by themselves.
So insight-driven stuff, because you know coffee and newspapers go together, and newspaper is a dead medium. So in fact, it's actually a way for these kind of medium also to look forward and think that they are not dead. By through adoption of technology, they will also get relevant. So have a QR code in an ad that gives you the direction to a coffee shop, simple stuff like that. You know, the second thing to remember is technology is nothing until it touches lives. You know, until it helps consumers to do something they want to do. So the one thing which we clearly need to know is, if this is the program or activation or whatever we're doing, what is the job to be done? And break down this job to be done into human components. You know, human beings, like Himanshu said, we are not consumers, we are people. People want to go home fast. People want to plan their holidays. People want their families to be well fed. You know, find me a man, allow me to sleep better, refresh me, surprise me, make my child safe, organize my day. These are jobs. And identify which is the simple human job which your communication needs to do. You know, that's the second thing. The third thing, and Himanshu, I think, mentioned about this, you know, it's integrated communication, 360 degrees, we've heard this. Even 20 degrees may work brilliantly. I mean, he said that, you know. It's not about telling the same brand story in the same way. Oh, this is the adapt, oh, it becomes smaller size, it becomes vertical. That's not the way forward, you know. The way forward is to leverage the power of each medium and channel to tell different and yet cohesive stories, but, of course, held together by the core brand idea. My last example of this, one I've been a proud partner of, Nike World Cup 2011 cricket, Sachin Tendulkar's last World Cup. It doesn't get any bigger than this. Cricket to us is about blood, sweat, and blue. So therefore, our thought of bleed blue and how we brought it together. One video which will bring that up. So you have to give me these 3 minutes for this video, sorry.
Place. Boundaries are there to be broken.
Sorry guys, only when I started playing this I realized this is Sri Lanka where I'm talking about, and this may not be a very good example. Really didn't strike me, really sorry about that. Yeah, but no, I mean, forget the results of the final, but you know, from the streets to the stage, You guys will win the next one. You guys beat us in the 2020 or something, so that's fine. You guys made up for it. I'm saying, from the streets to the stadium, organizing Nike Cups, tournaments, getting some artists to design jerseys and all of that together. TVCs, outdoor, print, all kinds of things. They're really coming together, but different things told. Player interviews, creating a fan of the team, all of that. It's really is about that, but all of it coming together to land that cogent punch. Sorry, no, I don't want to play that again. Yeah. And the last principle is, there's too much going out there, too much of complication. Make it simple. Don't make me think. Time. It's an attention deficit economy. So the fourth watch out is simplicity is really the #1 killer app. So keep it simple. In sum, to sum it up, I can't read this, so you basically have got it. I don't have time for summing up now. I'll leave it. So that's it, guys. Hope you liked it, and keep digitizing, and let's really be ready to do the big O. And enjoy it. Yeah. Thanks.
So thanks, Navneil. Before we started, he was asking, can I have a column mic because he prefers to walk. I said, forget the mic. I don't think you need a mic to start with. And I was about to issue him a health warning. I think he conceded that watch out if you can reach home tonight after that Nike presentation. But anyway, so thanks for that. Now, I think somebody on the panel must be wondering if this country's men have no chivalry and whatever, but let me assure you, we keep the best for the last. So I invite Sneh to come over here and speak on her sort of experiences on this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Manju. I'm sure we are all charged up after Neil's electrifying presentation. So very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So in next 20 minutes, I'll be taking you through the evolution of communication. So what is trending, what is not, what people are doing on digital, what should brands be doing on digital media, and a case where it's a perfect example of how can we integrate offline with online. So starting with the evolution of communication. So the first engraved word was the age of the stone, was the Stone Age, and then came the movable type, then the mass communication, the mass publication, then email, and then the tweet. The world we are living right now, the digital world. And I'm sure you all must have witnessed most of these technology shifts. So now we are living in this world where there are hundreds of digital media networks, digital platforms, social media networks. There are people tweeting every second. So what people are doing actually on those social media networks? So there are 517 million users on Twitter, tweeting 500 million tweets every day. There are more than 1 billion users on Facebook, interacting and sharing posts on their walls every day. There are 1 billion users each month on YouTube sharing 100 hours of content every day. There are 3 billion plus emails exchange going on every day, and 16 billion plus text exchanges every day. So internet has changed the way people share, search, and consume information. Brands today have no choice but to change the way they perceive their customers, the way they market, and the way they do not care about the customers. So it's time when brands, they have to go social. So the point is, how to go social? What should be the brand success strategy? What is the best strategy to go social? So I have categorized, and I think that this is the best way for any brand to go social. First is to reflect the mission, because brands are mission driven. Mission is the very reason for their existence. And to reflect the mission, they have to first develop the brand identity. They have to have a target market, a superiority claim, and a reason why. First, as a brand, you have to answer that why you are there. What is that one thing? What is that takeaway for a customer? Why a person should be following you on social media? Then comes the trust building. So build trust. Brands command a high level of consumer trust. So for building the consumer trust, you must, as a brand, should be able to express your brand. For that, you have to engage, you have to interact, and you have to involve customers in interaction. Finally, you have to keep trust. So today's audience is high on energy. They are very passionate and they are very emotional. So keeping their trust is very critical. So you have to protect your brand from various things happen on social media. So scandals and criticism, association with undesirable corporations, competition attacks. So brands can be easily be destroyed, and they rely heavily on trust, and they are really very vulnerable. So the point here is people don't buy what you sell, but they buy why you sell. So start with ask yourself this question, that why you're selling what you're selling. First answer this question, and then you're ready to go social. But before you go social, make sure you don't make this mistake. So the biggest mistake we see companies make when they first hit Twitter is to think Twitter as a channel to push information. So it's no more the case. Companies need to be a little more intelligent. Don't bombard social media channels with information about your own brand. Instead, involve in the conversation. Today, internet is overflowing with a lot of conversations. But if you have a closer look, each conversation is information. So people are talking about internet problems. They are talking about their likes and dislikes. They are talking about the new trends. So I'll give a few examples. So a person talking about my internet is not working. So it is a CRM opportunity for a brand. A person tweeting about how bad the new car model is. So it is a customer feedback on your new design. A customer talking about looking out for a new service or a new product or a new place in some destination. So it's a lead for you. A customer complaining about your competition, again, is a lead for you. A person who is sick with a new product. So probably here he's talking about the new experience, about his own experience. So as a brand, it is very important for you to go beyond just looking from a very high level on these conversations. Go deep inside, try to interact with those people, take the conversation to the second level. But remember, social media is not about hunting. Social media is about farming. It's about cultivating relationships. This opportunity is often seen as a problem by various brands. So these are the different problems as a brand you must have been facing. So the first problem is how to track those conversations. There are a lot of social networks. There are hundreds of them. There are billions of conversations happening. So how do we track them? Second problem is how to interpret and apply these insights into business activities. And the third problem is you have these conversations. Now how to reply? Because there are hundreds of channels. There are many conversations. So how do you actually handle those conversations? So it's simple. You have to start by listening. So by listening, marketing will relearn how to talk. So the first step of listening is social media monitoring. So there are a lot of tools available in this generation, for this generation, to listen, monitor, and engage with your customers. So social media monitoring is a systematic observation and analysis of social media activities, which includes social media websites, blogs, discussion forums, and microblogs. So this is called real-time engagement with your customers. So there are different ways how you can utilize the conversations you have been tracking. So what do you do after you have taken this step of monitoring? So what are the actions? So it starts with keyword analysis. So as a brand, what can you listen for? So there are various things. So one is what people are talking about your own brand, what people are talking about your competition, what people are talking about your products. So you identify those keywords. The next step is when it is an automated process. So there are a lot of tools available which brings to on your desktop all the conversation relating to these keywords. After that, you get the data about where people are talking, what they are talking, who are the people who are actually talking about these keywords. After you get that, then comes the big data analytics. So you take a deeper dive into the data, you get insights like demographics of people. So So demographics like what is the age group of people, which geography are they in, and what is the sentiment of the conversation? Is it negative? Is it positive? It is neutral. And the next step is how do you implement those insights into action? So there are various opportunities available on digital platforms. So one is social CRM. So brands like Airtel or a lot of banking and telecom companies, they are now using social media as customer support. So people no more call centers. So inbound calling is in existence now. So people instead tweet about a problem, they blog about it. So it is a brand's responsibility to be listening all the time. So you have to take care of people's problems on digital. So go where your customers are. Second is online reputation management opportunities. So if a person is talking negative about your brand, there are chances that after seeing that tweet, there will be 10 more people remembering the same problem. And this is how things go viral on digital. So as a brand, it's your responsibility to take care of that comment, try to convert that negative into positive, and in turn, create positive word of mouth. And that's how things go viral on social media. Third is customer engagement. So customer engagement obviously is important. So there are different networks. So the important point here is people might not be talking on your social channels. There might be tweeting without even hashtagging you, without even tagging you. So you have to engage with those people also. So social media monitoring gives you an opportunity to engage with anybody and everybody. Third is lead generation. So like I showed in the previous slide, so people talking about your competition is your lead. People talking about searching for something is your lead. So you can directly, so it's a proactive medium where you can actually search for people who are searching for you. They might not be aware about your services, but it's an excellent platform to go and reach out. And finally, positive buzz. So this is the case study of Schneider Electric, where they had no presence on social media 2 years back. So they actually started with listening and monitoring. So it was my client. So we started with listening to their competition. So we tracked what GE, what Siemens is doing on social media. We identified the trends. We identified what people expect, what your customers expect from you as a brand on digital. And first of all, where they are present. If they are not on LinkedIn, it's no point for you to go and create presence on LinkedIn. So we started with listening and monitoring. We devised a strategy to engage with the customers. And finally, so there were different categories. So first, we identified what customers are doing, what competition is doing. Second, we identified what people are talking about their own products. Then we identified that people are not actually happy with their APC UPS. So it was an opportunity to do social CRM. So they started with social CRM. Then third was what people are talking about Schneider Electric, and they were shocked to know that people are not talking at all. So not talking at all is also a problem. So the problem with them, in front of them, was how to make make people talk about the brand. So then we came up with this campaign. So they said that we are completing 50 years in India, and we want to save 50 million kilowatts of energy for India. So tell us how. So we came up with these 3 apps. So one is Energy Marathon. So it was the first of its kind digital marathon. So we thought that we'll try to change habits of people. So we created this app. It was a pedometer. So people were supposed to run and not use their vehicles. So based on how much they are running and how much distance they are covering, we calculated how much fuel they save. Based on how much fuel they save, we calculated how much energy they have saved. And obviously, for fitness freaks, it was a calorie meter also, that how much calories they are burning. So, and then we made it competitive. So people in real time were competing with each other. So the more they run, the more they save, the rank on the leaderboard was going up. So across India, people were engaging on this digital marathon. And finally, we invited top 10 runners to Bangalore Midnight Marathon, the real marathon. So this is a classic example of how you can actually change, or how you can marry offline with online. So we ended up saving more than 50 million kilowatts of energy by alone energy marathon. Apart from that, we launched Energy Calculator. Energy Calculator was an app through which you can actually calculate how much your desktop, how much your printer consumes, how much energy it consumes, because we as a consumer are not aware that how much are we actually consuming. So it was an awareness campaign where we forced people to save more, and people actually ended up pledging that they'll be saving more energy. So this is end of my session. So I hope you have learned something, that how can we marry digital with our real lives, and how social can actually create an impact on our real lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sneh. It's time for a quick commercial break for 5 minutes. Do not leave the room. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Platinum sponsor.
We learn, laugh, and play together every day, and we love it. Welcome to Etisalat, a part of your life every day of the year. Etisalat, it's about you.
Gold sponsor.
We believe in never giving up on what's important to you. AIA Insurance, the real life company.
Silver sponsor.
Pro for the win.
BoardPack, the leader in iPad board meeting automation.
Creative partner. Rays and Rods. Print media partner.
Vijay Newspapers, helping shape opinions.
Print partner.
All right. So, guys, the house is open now. I'm going to sort of throw in a few questions at the panel, and I'm looking forward to my screen here. If some of you are messaging your questions, but even otherwise, you want to raise your hand and ask anything, please stop me and let me know. So, but to get the basics out of the way first, and I'm sure there are many supporters to this question I'm going to ask to the entire panel, really, is that. Yeah, I think point taken and understood that digital is indeed a very effective medium. No question about that. But the point is, are we kind of hyperboling this a bit much? Because one sees very clearly that at least television and radio for sure continues to be a dominant medium. In fact, to the extent that there are many digital campaigns who rely so heavily on some of these mass mediums for its own success. So, just to get that theory out of the way, maybe you want to respond.
I'm going to just speak from a Sri Lankan perspective, and yes, majority of the mass brands are targeting audiences who are on traditional media. But your specific question was, is the hype being overhyped? And the reality is that in today's context, possibly you could escape it the way that you mentioned it. But as we go and target audiences, migrate into the online space, we know that today when we do research, there are certain audiences, the corporate clientele, youth, where the actual interaction with traditional media is very minimal. So that is just the beginning of this journey. As we go along, you're going to find that those audiences are interacting with traditional media even less. So I don't think you have a choice in the matter. As they move into this digital space, you are going to have to evolve into mechanisms of interacting and communicating with them. At this juncture of where Sri Lanka is and where there is a massive scope with traditional media, you definitely you can use your traditional media to promote digital. In the future, I don't think that that is a necessity. It is an opportunity. So, like the example that was showed earlier, you could use a traditional medium like print and have a cross-media promotion that would help increase the engagement. But it's not a necessity in the future. That is how I see it. Currently, definitely there is a level of promotion that is required simply because there's a huge generation X and that type of audience that still requires that type of engagement. So that's my.
So I think I agree with you in terms of the life stage of the marketplace. Sri Lanka, your argument is valid, but I'm sure there's a reason why, even in perhaps the most evolved internet market like US, people pay like crazy amount of money for one single spot on Super Bowl, which is television, really. So I'm still grappling with the issue that how interdependent or absolutely not dependent are these two spaces, and do they need to coexist, or one will win over the other eventually?
I think that when it comes to the digital, in certain aspects, yes, they support each other. But one of the biggest issues with also digital, what we have experienced, is that you try to integrate it with the rest of your campaign. And I think both of you all touched upon it, that when it comes to digital, the idea is what is core, but the actual executions can be different. So that's why I say that with digital, it gives you so much more opportunity. You don't necessarily have to have the support of traditional media. That is optional and contingent on what you're trying to do and the situation. So when you take one example, like you just gave, yes, maybe that particular situation extends itself where you can use that medium. But there are several other instances where you can actually debate and talk about where digital can go on its own. And that depends on the audience, and it's again contingent on exactly what you're hoping to do with it.
So on the first question, yeah, whether we are overplaying digital media, I think Novel made us enough worried about it, basically showing the threats of the future generation and also giving an insight into adding up to all the controversial reasons why we didn't win the 2011 World Cup, basically. But on a serious note, as Himanshu also mentioned, now media is becoming society, basically. So rather than a brand to consumer, it's all about consumer to consumer conversations. And if you look at the key influencers, where the brand leader was one of the key influencers who would give the messages to the consumer, today that has changed. Still, of course, friends and family might be on the top of the hierarchy of influencers, but the second most might be the reviews of the brands or the products which you get online. So basically, the man down the street is also coming in to influence consumer decisions. There are over 5 million tweets on a daily basis, and basically more than 1/3 of that is about brands. More than 256,000 or 50, no, more than 256 billion influential impressions are made annually on social media. So this is the conversations which are happening by people whom we don't know even, who might be having a big impact on our brand. So therefore, even if you're not present on digital media in a big way, as Sneha said, there are some basics that we need to do. We need to be listening to what is happening out there. And even if you are present with a website, your homepage might not be your landing page. For the top 25 brands, at least 25% of the results on Google will be consumer generated material. So your home page would be that results page of Google, so where you need to keep it clean. So that's why you need to have your search engine optimization sorted out, and also what kind of material would pop up on your home page, basically.
But moving closer to the whole sort of discussion about engagement on digital, Nouril, I want to address this one to you. The point you made about the conventional theory of awareness, intent, and all of that is out of the window. It's more about awareness to advocacy sort of value chain. if I'll travel, push you back perhaps maybe 100 years or so, when there was no real formal media in that sense, right? All you had was peer group, elders of the family and society, and so on and so forth. Do you see any similarities in the fundamentals of that era of media or absence of it, and now as we grapple with this complex theory on digital?
It's interesting you asked this question because, opt-in and all of that. So opt-in finally boils down to actually the fact that you are opting in, welcoming those brands into your lives, and you're welcoming those brands because those brands give you a feeling of goodness at some level. And therefore, at some level, it boils down to a term which is called goodwill. And if you use the word goodwill, goodwill is a word which accountants discovered many years back for actually evaluating any brand. Now, so you're actually back to goodwill in a different way. So actually the accountants got there much before than probably the marketers and communication. So that's where the similarity is. But, what goodwill can't do is what you saw with Band-Aid. It can't change consumer behavior in that way. It can't say that, here's a category where if you have injury, you go and buy a product, So that's where technology is creating that fundamental difference, which word of mouth wouldn't have ever been able to do. So that I think is the fundamental shift. And any other example, Volkswagen Fun Theory, all of that. The fact that you actually monitor behavior and influence behavior through that. Any amount of goodwill probably can't, because it's also about rewarding the lottery and how they change things. So that's the fundamental difference. But yeah, at some level, yes, advocacy is important, and that's the similarity between word of mouth of the earlier days and today.
All right, fair. Since we are on the subject, and Shrant, you come from media, I want to ask you this. Navanil and other speakers will spoke about, rather overemphasized the need for engagement, experience-based engagement, and so on and so forth. I want to ask you from a media perspective that in times like today, most of us in this room, at least 30 plus ones, are built on this whole understanding of media to say there is a certain value of repeat exposure, there is a certain sort of currency which you monitor your efficiencies in terms of frequency, OTS, GRPs, and so on and so forth. In the world of engagement and experience, is it fair to say that these currencies are kind of irrelevant now?
I think they've taken a new dimension. So I'll give you just two examples of it. With digital, because obviously the interaction is a lot more intense. You can't use frequency in the old sense of what we did with traditional media. But where it has changed, the two examples I can give you on this would be take X. That's a great example, where they consistently stay relevant to the brand ideology, and they keep coming up with engagement, whether it's via ad or activation, online activation. But they do it in a regular frequency, which the consumer is memorable, or the consumer is willing to repeatedly engage, thereby able to keep the brand persona alive, and people, the whole brand personality and brand identity is still alive, being simply on digital. When it comes to something that is more information based, then it's like blogging, for example, or tweeting, then you have a more consistent frequency that comes into play. But again, it's about relevance, and you can't overdo it, because like some of the people here have said prior to this, there is information overload. So whatever information you put there has to be relevant and engaging to the audience where they feel that it is useful. So in this sense, the frequency mode that we use, we're using different mechanisms to keep the brand top of mind in top of mind awareness. It is a huge issue, because as we move from traditional media to the digital space, and as audiences become more into digital, one of the big issues that brands and advertising agencies have is how to manage that frequency. So the currency actually would change.
To you, Sneh, sorry, you wanted to add something? Okay. So, Sneh, I wanted to understand, like you yourself pointed out in your presentation, and rightly so, I mean, there's an ocean of information floating around us right now, right? As a marketer who is attempting to get into that space, it's terribly overwhelming. I mean, thankfully we have experts like you, but sometimes you also need to have some self-conviction in dealing with these things. So how does a marketer choose to reject, accept any information as valid or important or not? And at the same time, also not live with this vulnerability that, oh God, there's so much I'm missing out on. I don't know what's really happening. I only have an eye to few things. What are the ways and techniques which you would sort of suggest for marketers to follow? Full time and shut down your shop, literally.
I think, Himanshu, I think we are not a brick and mortar model. We are click and mortar model because we have to have both in place. We cannot actually, we have to give that experience to our consumers. So then when they have to think about the convenience, how we can be convenient when we are providing our goods to customers. So if you're going strictly only to the click and mortar, I mean only for the digital media, the online, it's not going to work. You need to have that personal experience with the brands, which they engage and then they feel about the brand. And then once they have that experience, then they will go and buy online. So it's about definitely you need to
So that's
be
a trigger
quick and-
point for online consumption later on.
Yes.
Fair point. But related to that, I want to ask you, Roshan, uh, what's your view on, having different, if at all, sort of value proposition in the online space versus the offline space for the same brand and at the same campaign? I mean, is it necessary to have distinct propositions? Can you operate on the same? What do you think?
Well, so my view is, if you look at the value proposition of a brand, it's what the brand is built on. It's like the DNA of the brand. So whether one thing is, of course, you need to get the value proposition of the brand right first of all, and articulate it very clearly to your target audience. And whether it is online or offline, you will have to be consistent. I think Ramani also spoke about it in the morning. You mentioned in terms of execution consistency versus idea consistency, which I agree on. So you need to have that consistency going from an idea perspective on your value proposition, whether it's online or offline. But the whole point is when it comes to online, the way you interact and bring that value proposition to life will be different, depending on which stage you are in the sales life cycle. There could be situations where you may have an exchange proposition. That is, you may have to give something to get something from the consumers. You will have to offer some kind of a value, some kind of a entertainment value. You might not agree, but or utility value, as you mentioned, so that we can get something back in terms of their contact details, their email, address, telephone number, so that we can have a conversation, we can start the conversation. Once you start the conversation, then you can engage the consumer in terms of with material, what they would be interested in, what they're looking for. Again, this could be something called the development proposition, where you will be driving towards acquiring the consumer to buy into your brand, basically. So once you have bought the consumer and got the consumer into your brand, then you need to develop that consumer as your advocate, basically. So that's the ultimate. And then grow through the consumer life, value life cycle. So that's the growth proposition. So a small example of this would be one of the categories, which it's an infant category. It's a toddler category which is in the infant stage, basically. So we are creating a category called growing up milk powder, where we are our key target audience is obviously mothers with children in the age group of 1 + 1 to 5 years. The value proposition is basically we are offering value-added specialized milk which would help their kids to develop their brain function, because the first 4 to 5 years, 80% of the brain development happens. So this is the value proposition from a brand's perspective. But through online and offline interventions, we would offer exchange propositions to consumers, which would interest them to give their information to us, where we would know what their interests are through our social listening about parenting. Especially we target the first-time moms who are looking for information out there. So through providing expert information, through offering that opportunity, we would get their information. Then we would be having online conversation. We would have, we also have a CRM system in place where we would call up and help them with information at different stages. And also through this, we would also encourage them to buy into the brand. So once they buy into the brand, they join a club called Smart Moms Club, where they get so many different interventions to drive the growth of the brand.
Okay. Coming to you, Taranga, in the larger gamut of financial services and banking, HSBC is generally considered to be sort of doing pretty well in the online space. Having said that, there's a lot of skew of messaging and initiatives in that space, which is more, let's say, promotion-oriented or response-driven. Now, I want to understand your view on, does it mean in your thinking or in the industry's thinking, if you talk on their behalf, that there's not much of a scope at the moment for sure for thematic brand building opportunity in the digital space? So is it largely about inducing responses, creating acceptance from a promotion, but not so much thematic content? How far do you see that?
I think especially when it comes to credit card space, if you look at the card space, which is primarily where we focus on in the retail banking space. I think the challenge that we have is that obviously the train has left the station in terms of value propositions and so on when it comes to the consumer. But I think the challenge is that everybody is doing the same. So if you really take a piece of newspaper today, everybody is offering a great offer. So it's about how you differentiate yourself and how you kind of become relevant and also stand out from the rest. So the big challenge is that how do you really use the opportunities in digital and also the traditional media. I think in the banking space for the longest time, I think if you look at banking, if you look at how a customer really starts a relationship, for the longest time it was always a customer would walk into a branch. The brick and mortar model always worked. And then we moved on to what we basically have a feet on street operation where the sales guy really goes to the customer. But if you take like advanced economies, like for instance Australia or US or UK, I think you basically see this new trend where there is this model called aggregation. So now you would basically take a product, a banking product, not based on the person who's selling the product to you, but basically on a digital platform which basically showcases the best that would fit your kind of need. So aggregation is going to be the future. So in Australia, for instance, HSBC per se has a proposition where you can technically get a credit card online. And in Sri Lanka, you need to sign a with a wet signature. But in Australia, you basically can, from start to finish, the application process and basically signing up, everything's done online. So I think that's where we are heading towards. Now, having said that, I'm not saying for the a moment that we will lose focus on the traditional platform. That will always remain. I mean, the great example is if you look at the tablet. 5000 in 5000 BC, if you look at the Egyptians, they actually created a tablet which stored information. And if you look at your Apple tablet, the iPad, it's the same size. So it amazes you how basically history repeats itself, and that's going to happen as well in the banking space. So yes, digital is really important, but the core of the from a customer experience perspective, I think basically it will remain pretty much core and pretty much relevant based on the customer's choice.
Right. No, but I think the key question amongst the audience mind as well would be like if you go to most websites, even outside industry, for instance, you often find the websites to be pretty sort of monologish, very e-brochure type. I mean, there's hardly any interactivity built into them. HSBC to a great extent has a fairly efficient self-service online model, which is widely used by customers. So in your scenario, how do you evaluate effectiveness of that in terms of engagement quality? What's the matrix you sort of apply in your mind to say whether we are doing good or not?
I think banking is probably not the most interesting subject, but I think it's about how the customer has kind of moved on. So if you look at 15 years ago, every consumer would walk into a branch. But today, 60% of our customers, obviously it's the target audience that we deal with, uses internet banking. And I can tell you that internet banking gives much more functionality than a traditional branch that you walk into. You can basically pay your bills, you can pay all your utility and also do transactions. Now it's not going to stop there. Obviously that's going to go into different convergence in terms of different platforms like mobile and iPads and so on. That's going to move on. But what's interesting is the customer experience is getting that much better. And obviously it's going to grow as we move on. And I think the customer is also seeing the benefits of moving into more functional online platforms. And one example is if you take the credit card space. I mean, for the longest time, we use in Sri Lanka, we actually for credit card acquisition we use a Salesforce, a feet on street operation. But one of the things that we started recently is we were missing the 20 to 25-year-olds, which is our primary audience, the new customer who would like to have a credit card. But these guys don't read the newspapers. They don't really live in the traditional world. So what we did was we actually created using search optimization online tool. And if you look at a credit card in your wallet, I think only thing that differs is probably the name of the bank and perhaps the color and which issuer has issued your credit card. So what we tried to do was we wanted to create an experiential piece, and on this platform, you have to basically enter your details. So one of the first details we ask is what is your income, and the second detail obviously is your name. So when you enter your name, based on your income, it projects what card you get with your name on it. So that's the kind of personalization that we kind of created using digital, and I can tell you this is absolutely impossible if you look at the traditional media. So these are some of the simple examples. I think we have moved on, but I would confess that we are still on a journey. I think the rubber has hit the road, just that obviously there's a long way to go, and I'm sure we have to start somewhere.
Sorry, you want to add?
I actually just want to add to that question. I mean, when you asked about that thematic brand building. Just a thought. I mean, you guys, I don't know how many, 2014, 2010 Football World Cup, the Nike film, right? The Future. 3-minute TVC. Where do you think that TVC was premiered? You know, today it's a generation, it's an age where films don't get premiered. Advertising films can also get premiered. And it was premiered online, only for Nike football fans. So I'm saying, you know, you're always challenged for the 30-second TV spot otherwise, and the spiraling media cost of that. You know, if your content is good enough, and that's a big if, because it's not easy to create that kind of film or that kind of content, then I would say, why can't you do thematic brand building where you premiere TVCs, where you do things, and the freedom for you is actually to go beyond 30 seconds, tell full stories, 2-minute, 3-minute, whatever. I mean, it's yours, you know. Citadel, I mean, Lakpin, you know, they short stories. I mean, so lots of opportunities exist. So I'm saying it's probably our way of looking at traditional media and digital media and the roles we in our minds have assigned to it that is leading to it. Yes, digital is interactive and transactional and all of that, but if the content is good, you can do thematic brand building also. In fact, at a far lesser cost, I would say. If the content is good, somebody else will, you know, you still have to push it yourselves, but then others will, and that's truly viral, you know. So that's the only addition.
So, but it's quite ironical, Navalin, that you argue for thematic emotional advertising online when your presentation says that the world is moving from functional to more functional.
Yeah.
So are we saying it's the death of emotion here?
Yeah. No, that is an obvious question. I was expecting that anyway. You know, my favorite example here is actually Coke. Coca-Cola is, if there is anything about that brand, it's 100% emotional brand, and it still is. You know, it talks about happiness, open happiness. But look what it is doing, and that is what I meant when I said the product and the service. It's made that damned real space of the vending machine, and by including it with imbuing it with technology, it has made that vending machine into a far more happiness device. That's not a vending machine anymore. You plug a coin into it, sometimes instead of one, for the price of one, you'll get 3 cans coming out of it. Sometimes burgers come out of it. Sometimes countries join hands to say, like they did with India and Pakistan, to say that they actually belong together, and if you do that, you get a free Coke. I'm saying you are creating and evoking that emotion of happiness, but you're actually doing it by augmenting your product and your service in some way. That's the way. It's all about, the whole fact is about real and online, the lines between them blurring. And that's what I meant by augmenting of products and services. It is not that we'll cease to be emotional. It's a new way of generating that emotional response. I mentioned when I was talking about, it's not talking emotion, it's evoking and demonstrating that emotion and really make that come out of your consumer. That's the new emotion.
I just wanted to add one thing on brand building online. You know, with the transparency of and information that you have out there, almost everything that you do ends up in building brand. There's this whole concept in brand building. Now, I can give you an example also that by behavior, there are companies that build brand. Now in Sri Lanka, you take a company like Dialogue. This is debatable, and you can argue that they do a lot of advertising. But I think a lot of the success of Dialogue has been seen as an innovator is actually attributed to how the brand behaves. Now, when it comes to the online space and how a brand projects itself, whether it is via a thematic ad or whether it is via CSR or whether it's how it responds to its customers, all that ends up in actually building the overall persona for the brand, and it's more intense online. So just the point when you said about building brand online and using thematic advertising, I think that every little bit of piece of information or any imagery you put out there eventually comes. And just one thing on that. So when people talk about social media and getting into advertising, what you find is a lot of people think that they need to be humorous to engage audiences. And you find people moving away from their true brand DNA just to give people what we call in our agency a cheap thrill. And what they actually eventually end up doing is moving away from the brand meaning of what you call the co-brand idea to have a cheap thrill. You know, it's like a one-night stand engagement that takes away from the core of what the brand is. So in terms of thematic, all that, I think you need to consider all of those things.
So we're almost at the end of the session. I invite any questions which people have. Otherwise, we're ready to stop here. So thank you so much for your time. And I think the conclusion really is that we need to focus on digital for engagement. And my personal view is, I think this is, besides digital, it's an era of honest marketing. You can no longer hide behind things, be clever. You have to be transparent and fuller in your truth. And that, I think, is a good recipe for success. Good luck to all of you in this endeavor. Thank you for your time.
Before I thank our speakers and other partners and invite you for the most entertaining and most looked forward to event, I have another pleasurable task, that is to invite Rajita from Candlelight to accept this contribution on behalf of all the speakers. May I invite Ravi to hand over this?
I think Candlelight was associated with LBO for about 3 years, and we are a small charity. If you look at our reimbursement, we disburse about 25 million rupees annually, which is sometimes small change for a lot of you when you look at your budgets and your advertising. But I suppose we do it as a link between somebody's kindness and generosity and another person's need. So that's where Candlelight comes in. And we go by the theme, it is better by far to light a solitary candle than to curse the darkness. So I really want to thank Lakshman. They've supported us for the last 3 years, and we are very grateful to that. Thank you, Lakshman.
Okay, I'll quickly wrap this up. First, I would like to thank once again our sponsors, Etisalat Sri Lanka, who continue to be our platinum entitled sponsor for the last 2.5 years, and AIA Insurance, who the company which has been in association has been working with us for the last nearly 15 years, and Pro from Hemas today, and Iron One. Also, our other partners, Vision Newspapers, Race and Rods, and Corporate Image. Also, Chairman of CIA Sri Lanka region, President of SLIM, and Vice President of AMF, and also Brian from CISI, endorsing your respective institutions for endorsing this event. And I would like to thank all our speakers for wonderful presentations and contributions they made. And these speakers during the last few weeks work very closely with session chairs and other panelists to come out with a brilliant presentation. So I think that hard work paid off, and we were able to witness some of the great presentations today. And I thank all our speakers, session chairs, and panelists. As for the presentations, they will be available to download within the next 48 hours. You will receive an email from summit@vanguardlanka.com. There is a complaint that some of you may have not received our emails. I would like you to check your spam box, and if you haven't received email from us within the next 48 hours, please give me a call, or because I have given my telephone number, or call any of us, any of the numbers in the folder. So we will ensure that you will get these presentations, and also comments and questions. We have saved them. We will try to get as much response as possible. We have harvested nearly 100 questions, so we will continue the dialogue. So that's about it. And finally, I would like to thank Ravi, and with great vision, taking up the challenge of creating great Sri Lankan brand to make it an international brand. Thank you so much, Ravi, sharing us the secrets behind success of Kelly Felder. Snehi, thanks so much for joining us. Again, flying especially for this event and sharing your experience in social media. Thank you so much, Neil. It was wonderful to have you with us. And Roshan, thank you, Roshan. Thanks so much. And Taranga, for your contribution. And Himanshu, thank you so much for chairing this 2-hour marathon session. Please put your hands together and thank our Okay, I would like to, apart from the birthday of your girlfriend, boyfriend, any other close relations, a close person, or your own birthday, please remember Thursday, 21st May 2015 will be the third annual LBR LBO Summit, and we look forward to seeing you once again in the same venue. Please join us for cocktails. Thank you so much.
Platinum sponsor.
We see them all every day. He wants a new smartphone. Just can't choose which one. That's where we come in. Uh-oh. Oh, look at her. I don't think she's leaving anytime soon. She came in with a problem, and she's leaving with the perfect solution. Who do we have here?